Hi, welcome to Advanced Structural Concepts. My name is Roger Schroeder and I'm your instructor this semester. So I make these videos to kind of capture, kind of pre-rehearse lecture, go through it, review it for myself, but also to capture it so that it's available for somebody else who may miss class and want to be able to see what was presented. So the first thing I want to have is a kind of a dialogue before I present really what the course is all about. Um, and ask the question, what do you want to learn? I kind of want to hear that because as I go through the projects we're going to talk about, the things we're going to do in the course, I want to be cognizant of where you are with what you think you might want to learn. Most of you are fourth and fifth year students, so you're really quite sophisticated in what architecture is and what it has to offer and what you need to learn yet. And then a bigger question that kind of goes to pedagogy, the idea of the underlying basis for all of the things we teach here at Alfred is where do we where do we stand at Alfred as future architects in the community of architects? How do we see ourselves? Are we the pragmatic builders? Are we the far off thinkers? Are we futurists? Where do we stand, or where do you think you stand, and where do you think the school should stand as far as these ideas of pedagogy? That fits best with what we are. So I want to set a little bit of the context of the course. I've kind of filtered things down into three components for this course: facade tectonics, materials, materiality, and computational design. I'm really strongly interested in this idea of facades, and that comes from my background as being a consultant for building products manufacturers who work in the world of the facades. Boston Valley Terracotta, a ceramic manufacturer, and Rigidized Metals, a metal panel manufacturer. So we look at rain screens, embodied carbon, unitized modular construction, especially related to the facade itself. Um, a strong component of this course is the idea of exploring materials, mass timber, ETFE, glass, steel, exposed structural steels. And so, and really just to give you a chance, if you haven't in studio, to do a little deeper dive into that and explore those. And a lot of these projects are based on the underpinnings of the idea of computational design. So I introduced the idea of generative design, form finding, using Rhino and Revit. Rhino is a three-dimensional program, if you don't know it already, and it is a very powerful tool that can now be integrated into Revit with a lot of feature sets that are currently unavailable inside of Revit. So this idea of computational design, though, is really a preparation for where the industry is going, in the 10-year out or the 20-year out, kind of to help prepare you for the future you, the future architect and leader that you will become once you're in the world of practice. This is another visual, really that same thing. And one I'll get rid of and one I'll keep as this slideshow goes through. But this actually is the facades kind of is detailing each one of the projects we go through. So you'll see there's about 4, 8, 13 projects listed here. And I want to promote this idea of thinking about this as not a design studio, but a technical studio. And so, but the studio environment is a really important concept that the idea is that we are working through in a free-form way. So I give you somewhat structured projects to do, but I really expect them to come back in with a little added creative embellishment, so to speak, to kind of keep things lively, to help to keep us engaged. And then I put dialogue in and why it matters. Dialogue is kind of the lifeblood of what keeps the energy within any kind of creative endeavor, especially a learning environment. And I really desire to hear that from you. I get to do a lot of talking because I'm the lecturer, but I'm also trying to encourage as much as possible that dialogue coming back. So I wanted to touch on this idea of tectonics. I talked about facade tectonics. Tectonics really kind of is a word that I had really avoided using. I was never comfortable with its definition because of the idea of its relationship to plate tectonics and geography. It seems to be quite a move into the world of architecture, but it's used a lot. And I guess I'm really happy to start embracing it and using it more in a way that I'm comfortable with. And I thought this definition of tectonics in architecture was quite useful. The science or art of construction, both in relationship to use and artistic design. So the idea is that we use materials to build buildings, but the one isn't normally determine what the actual form will be. We have a lot of flexibility in the way we use wood and concrete to accomplish performance goals in our architecture and structural goals in our architecture. And this idea of this tectonic exploration is really goes to I think what the heart of this course is. A little more about me. I try to be active in the field as far as the pedagogy and educational concepts, and I've been really lucky to have some papers that I've been able to present at conferences, and facade tectonics is one of those. I also carry a website too that you might want to just take a peek at. I keep a lot of content about myself there. And another group that was Facade Tectonics. Another group is the Building Technologies Educator Society. I presented a paper there, and I think I've done an online webinar kind of presentation. And, you know, kind of expressing my idea, that idea of architecture, technology, and not just the technology of building, but also the technology of experiencing. So this idea of kind of VR to understand how buildings are constructed, not just to experience buildings, but to help to deconstruct them and understand them better in an educational format. So this year I'm going to Facade Tectonics in October to present another paper on this idea of actually a piece of classwork that we'll do. And I'll discuss that more as we go forward. So I'm really I look forward to this idea of being involved in this part of the world of, I guess, the professional end of it, and being able to kind of like work back and forth and bring the things I learned from these kind of conferences back to our educational experience. So a little bit about my performance review. I'll tell you just quickly some of my shortcomings. I've been at this for 6 years, so I've been able to get some relatively good marks on a lot of aspects of my teaching. You can go through these individually. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. But the idea is you get to grade me too. So that idea of feeling like grades aren't consistent, I think that dialogue, we can keep that dialogue going all the way through the course. And I think that's really valuable, because the goal is that everyone gets the most they can out of it. And so this idea of, for me, is constantly improving. So I got some slightly lower marks in motivation, which kind of surprises me. But it may be that I'm not asking enough of you to do creative work, and maybe you're more engaged into that in studio. So I'm cognizant of that, and I'm going to really try to focus on that this semester. My attitude towards the subject matter just kind of surprises me. I'm going to put that on pause while the dogs bark. Sorry about that. So attitude kind of surprises me. I have a really good attitude about it. I think maybe one of the weak places where my attitude comes through is that I'm always grappling with what content to be teaching, whether I'm teaching you the most important things at one time. And that kind of keeps the course lively for me. Things come and go into the course depending on where the world's going, what the significant ideas are of our current trajectory through the world of architecture. Another thing I've tried to work on, and this is a variety of activities, try and come up with different things to do other than BIM modeling. Students really seem to be very hungry for other kinds of experiences. And so I've tried to introduce some reading assignments and some writing assignments in this course also. I think I've lost my accessibility. I try to be very accessible. I'm only on campus 1 day a week, but once again, trying to improve on that. Realize that I am accessible via email, so we can chat on Collaborate. I'm just not physically there. I answer my email as promptly as possible. I check my email all the time. I've always had issues with grading. Once again, I'm working on that, trying to be much more predictable about my grading and rubrics. If you're unhappy with a grade or you're confused about a grade, please dialogue with me. Tell me that. Tell me you're wondering why you got this grade instead of a better grade, or whatever. Happy to have that dialogue, and it teaches me how to be a better grader. Some of my presentations aren't thought-provoking. I have to apologize for that. That just may be a personality problem. I'm not sure I'll be able to completely improve on that, but any help would be appreciated. And then a little bit lower on my effectiveness as a teacher, which is a bit disappointing. But once again, it may be kind of the sum of all the things I'm not doing right. So some other criticisms here. Teach other programs other than Revit. I'm trying to fix on that. Be more open-minded to students. Now these are comments that one person made over years, so I'm not exactly sure how much of these are currently play into what's going on in our future course learning environment. But I've really come to be much more open-minded, I think, in the last couple of years to what students want, and I'm trying to really work on that. Enthusiasm not always well directed and can be intimidating. So I'm enthusiastic, and that can come off as intimidating, and I apologize for that. Obviously, I've been a consultant for years, so the idea of trying to be authoritative in the ideas that I present is something that I'm trying to maybe moderate. Different learning strategies, once again, that idea of different than BIM and Revit, working on that. The grading rubric. This is one that I've worked on and haven't been successful at, is to try and get the class offered earlier. That may be starting to show up this year because I have more students registered. Maybe they're younger, or your 4-year students now that are starting to register for the course, which I think this course should be taught earlier. I think the things you'll learn in this course will be really useful for you even in later studios. Too much Dynamo, too similar. I really reduced that content. Best terracotta wall system. Be more flexible at the end of the semester to ensure we can schedule class and complete assignments. Because, and I'm well aware of the idea of the studio crunch that happens at the end of semesters. So enough about that idea. Once again, though, you get to grade me. I want to be a good student. I want to get a good grade also. You're going to help me do that by having great dialogues with me. Facade focus. This course is really predominantly about the way things look, the way that facade presents itself. So we spend a lot of time on that. This is just an old store facade, probably from the 70s, the kind of the idea of the facade really being just that front element. And I mean that, superficially, but as we explore it, we're really going to dig deeper into that facade. And today, that idea of the performance of the facade is really so much more significant than it was back then. So we, I'm not trivializing the facade. I'm just opening it up for dialogue, because most of the early coursework we're going to do has to do with this idea of the performance of that facade. We also have requirements for advanced structural concepts. It needs to fit within a sequence of these technology courses. You've had some structural engineering or structural design in wood and steel and concrete, and I try to kind of expand on some of that analysis in this course. So here's the course layout. If you've taken my my introduction to computer visualization, then you'll know that the concepts are very similar about the way I run a course. We have a topic discussion, and then we really have a lab or a hands-on work-through session of the course. And this is the current session, or this is the current schedule as I've laid it out. For those of you who have not taken a course from me, be aware that all the projects, and hopefully be comforted by the fact that all the projects are directed by videos that I've segmented off that help you to go step by step through the process, at least to arrive at the first level of completion of a project. And once again, back to that idea of inspiring you to do your best work. Most of the ideas that I present in the projects are the base level, and I hope that creative expression of ideas can kind of push through and get worked into these projects as you work through to complete them. I also hoped that the projects that you do, you can see them as portfolio pieces. And this goes to the kind of motivation about the quality of the presentation. Can you use these in your portfolio to present kind of experiences, learning things that you've done, and creativity that you've had? I used to make apologies for the sophistication of this course, kind of the technology, the complexity of architecture. I had many students very early on that really wanted to be much more pragmatic and kind of rectilinear in their architecture, and I was offering these kind of really complex systems. I really found that over the years I've both moderated the content of the course and the attitude of the students have changed, so I really no longer need to actually even have this discussion. I leave it in because if we do want to have this discussion, this would be a good place to do it. But right now, next year, this would not exist in this slide presentation. So let's do a quick run through of the projects we're going to do, just to give you an overall view. Once again, have dialogue if we're together. You'll see up in the top corner there, the yes all. That means that everyone in the course last year decided that this one should have stayed in the package of learning experiences. So the first one we do is a rain screen. I provide you with a very rich curtain wall panel that you can then modify and populate and to create a initial concept for rain screens, and then be able to actually deconstruct that and look at the components that are inside of it. We then go to looking at a modular curtain wall system. We look at making an aluminum extrusion, thinking about attachment systems, how the curtain wall is hung on the building, the relationship of glazing to either baguettes or solid massing in order to create interesting facade systems. And that was a yes all by that group. One of the things that I've removed, and this is because we do this in computer visualization, but it was an introduction to Dynamo. We made a curved, an adaptive responsive ceiling panel system. Everyone said it should be remained in, but it actually, this course, the students this year may say it doesn't need to be because we've already had that experience and it's well in our memories. If not, I do have another project that we could do, which I'll mention towards the end. This one is added. This one won't remain probably in the course, but I introduced this in computer visualization. This is actually a chance for us to do a facade exploration. So I take you step by step through kind of the hacks of using Revit as a BIM modeler to create different kinds of facade expressions. And that's kind of a warm-up for what will be a new piece of content this year. So there's no grading on it. It never occurred before, no yeses by the students before. But the idea is that we're going to look at a punched wall system, conceive it as a facade mock-up, model it out, so you get a chance to create custom facade panels and vertical column elements. And then we look at the way we're going to attach it back to the assemblies. And this is actually, once again, this is part of your experience going through this, as part of what I'm presenting at the World Congress, and this idea of facade tectonics and really starting to dig deeper into the way that facade systems are constructed for architects, just to help with issues of things like thermal breaks, material embodiment, carbon embodiment in the materials that we use, complexities in our designs for making sure that we can waterproof them and weatherproof them. So really a chance to dig in to look at that idea of detailing. This one was removed, just so you know what's a dynamic list. We used to do a truss construction, a dynamic truss, kind of a second facade. Everyone hated it, so it's gone. This year, most people did not like this project, but it's still in because it's really kind of a NAB requirement. Let that, I don't know if that fire is. It's summer in Buffalo and I'm downtown. So this one was rejected by the students, but I've really included it in, and this is really because it's kind of critical that we do this kind of structural analysis as part of the course core requirement for our accreditation. So I've simplified it, but I'm not removing it, and I think you'll probably be happier with it this year, although you won't have anything to compare it to. Well, once again, that's the idea of exploring materials too. So we look at exposed structural steel. We look at plastic films, these ETFE, just a way to model them and express them. Students wanted to keep that. We look at this idea of an adaptive form using Dynamo to create and shape that structure. That was a yes to all. This is a next chance for us to explore kind of wood and talk about wood a little bit. Then we go into, this one was removed. This was a continent, so even though these were removed, this does not necessarily mean that you can't do them. If you're interested in doing these can be substituted for other projects or done as extra credit. So the idea was we created a mathematical piece of geometry, a decaying waveform, and then modeled it onto a facade. Students had a lot of issues with crashing Dynamo, the programming environment that we were working in. So I've actually removed this, but it's still available in the pack. So then we come to, so week 9 now, we're into modular construction. So we look at the idea of creating a unit module and then stacking them to create both an interesting facade and a full layout for a building. Once again, we work in the concept of heavy timber. Two said no. There's some problems with the way that I've structured this. I made model elements instead of family elements. So I would like to go back and redo this, hopefully before this runs, to kind of make the project go smoother. Students enjoyed this one. This one kind of surprised me. It was T-splines, which is just an introduction of one of the computer modeling techniques. It's not necessarily available inside of Revit alone. We have to use Dynamo programming environment in order to get it in. And so this one will be kept in. This is just a, I don't want to spend too much time, but Sean Kurzdorfer used T-splines. And what was really remarkable was that his model looked very similar to an airport that Zaha Hadid had designed. Sean didn't copy this. So it really is remarkable that when we start using materials that are new and different, we start really coming up with solutions that are really contemporary, are happening with some of the most powerful thinkers of our day. Another one I removed, we used to do a stress analysis using Dynamo. Students hated it. So just a reminder, I'm taking things out and putting things in. We do a glass facade, or excuse me, an image mapping. In this case, it could be a glass facade, it could be a panel facade. We learn how to take a digital image and then map it in order to create a facade element. And that's part of our glass experimentation. We also, this one wasn't evaluated, so I don't know how I don't remember how the students felt about it, but I knew it was relatively positive. But we go through and we look at creating just glass curtain wall systems. There's a lot going on with glass, so this is just a chance for us to kind of flex our modeling muscles in the idea about how we create structural glass systems for curtain walls. This will be new this year. It was in previous years, but I've added it back in again. The idea of for shear and seismic loading seems to be an important part of accreditation that isn't covered in other courses. So we'll make an adaptive brace for like a heavy timber system, and then think about ideas of shear and seismic loading, and also fire protection and shaft wall liners for egress systems. And then we'll do a couple of kind of advanced concepts. Generative design, we'll look at the analysis of placing a building on a site and then trying to identify best views. But that's all based on the idea that we have automated tools to, once we parametricize our models, we can then put them all through kinds of rigorous evaluations and come up with the best solutions for what we might have in mind in our design intent. This was not assigned last semester. This year I'm working on this. This is at the very end, so I'm not exactly sure how this will play out. But we'll look at starting to use Rhino inside of Revit so that you just have the technical understanding about how to do this, because Rhino offers so many tools, especially in its programming language of Grasshopper. And then, yes, all, we're going to look at TestFit, which is a algorithmic kind of generative design layout program for doing multifamily mixed-use developments, just to give you a chance to see how the field is starting to advance. So that covers all of the projects. The one I had discussed about, Introduction to Dynamo with that curved ceiling that you've already done if you've taken my computer visualization course. The option would be to do this tall building project, which is just a model using a few numbers, a curvy tower type structure. So keep that in mind, and we can have that discussion when we're together. So that completes the introduction. Once again, obviously very dry when I present it this way. I'm hoping that during class we'll have a lot of lively discussion about it.